Okay, welcome back. Our next presenter is Bonnie McBride, and she's going to present on the topic of ready to ditch or modify Dewey. Now, this is a very contentious discussion
It is.
topic in the school library world. So I'm interested to see and hear your viewpoint. So on that note, what I'm going to do is turn over the controls to you and you can take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm just going to hop right in. Hello to my fellow BPS librarians. Van, I see you in the chat. Here we go, sharing my screen. And we're off. I have a lot I want to share with you, so I'm going to try to go quickly. And I will ask if you do have questions, because as Casey said, this is a very contentious issue with lots of moving pieces and viewpoints and opinions. Like, throw them in the Q&A. If I can't get to them during this 30 minutes, I will go back and answer them in the Q&A by typing. So if you are ready to ditch or modify Dewey, I hope you're ready to listen to this presentation. I'm Bonnie McBride. I'm the teacher librarian at Family High School in Boston. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm never going to call it X, sorry, at Book Nerd Bonnie. I was a super late adapter to that, and now it's leaving, and I'm so sad. I also recently just won the Massachusetts School Library Association Super Librarian of the Year Award, so I'm really excited to share that new title. All right, let's go. And advance. So that's me. Slide link at the bottom if you want to follow along. It's bit.ly/BL modify Dewey 23. I've embedded a lot of links in here. I love being able to learn from other people. And then when I do, I want to share out things that I've learned. So you are welcome to click through, see what I do. Maybe it will inspire you, give you ideas. I'm going to drop it in the chat real quick. Let me make sure it goes to everyone. All right, there's the link if you want to follow along. It will also be at the end of the presentation. So if you didn't grab it now, you'll see it later. So quick intro to my library, because the last time I gave this presentation to my state library association, people had lots of questions about my library. So I started by genrifying fiction. I have hyperlinked in here if you're following along. Just a little how-to that I did for my own district of like how I did it. I have a separate memoir section, but then I shelved my biographies in their matching Dewey sections. I have a separate Spanish language section, and my graphic novels are split into 4 different categories. I pulled out graphic novels, graphic bios, manga, and comics. And I'm super excited for Sarah Smith's presentation after this about supersizing your graphic novel section, because this is the biggest section of my library right now, the most popular, but I need to make it bigger. Okay, and whenever I present, I always have to talk about a book, because as much as we do, reading and promoting the joy of reading is still a huge part of what we do. So I'm really excited to promote this book, The Song of Us, which is by a best friend of mine and a former colleague, Kate Fussner. It is a perfect book for that upper middle grade, lower YA. And I know we've all been talking like we need more of that. So this is a novel and verse retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth with 2 queer 7th graders set in Boston. It is gorgeous, and you don't have to take my word for it. Jason Reynolds blurbed this book. I don't know if you can see it on the book cover, but he read it, said it's awesome. So I know we all love him. You don't have to listen to me, listen to Jason. Check this one out, add it to your to-buy list for the fall. So agenda. First, why not Dewey? As Casey said, it is contentious. There's been lots of discussion in many forms of social media about like why change or why not. So I'll kind of go through that. I'm going to talk about my pre-planning. My pre-planning was kind of nuts. It took me a long time to actually make the jump. And I just wanted to go through it to show you that like, this isn't something that you could start tomorrow. It could be, but also it's okay if you take a long time to get to something. I go into exactly how I'm making the change, some tips that I found after 6 or so months of doing this. And then if you do have questions, like I said before, we've got the Q&A open, like drop them in there and I'll try to get to them. And chat, I'm not looking at right now, but maybe I'll look at it later. Okay, so why not Dewey? I have many thoughts about Dewey, but the things that people keep saying I want to try to answer. So first, who's Dewey? I know some of the people in here right now might be brand new to school librarianship, and they're kind of like, well, I know what the Dewey Decimal System was when I was in school, but what exactly is it? So this guy, Melville Dewey, created this classification system for libraries back in 1876. It's what's known as a hierarchical classification system. It uses numbers, decimals. It's a way of arranging your library. And technically a library, if you're following Dewey, like your fiction should have the Dewey numbers on them too. So many of us don't do that anyway. It was made by a man who we now know to be very racist and misogynistic, and it was all done through his viewpoint. And this is something to keep in mind no matter what classification you decide to do, that if you're the one creating it, you have your own implicit biases that you might not be aware of. So whatever you end up going to, there is going to be some bias baked into any system. So the Dewey Decimal System is really a product of its time, and it's a product of the person who created it. I had to throw this picture of DW in here because I love Arthur. So one big thing that people will say over and over again, but if you don't have your library set up by Dewey, but students are going to need that in the future, how would they know? So my biggest argument is, I feel it's way more important to teach our students how to find a book in any library rather than teaching them a specific system. And this is because, in my experience, many academic libraries tend to use the Library of Congress classification. Some public libraries use it. Here in Boston, our public library, nonfiction, uses the Library of Congress classification system. And then there's other public libraries who are completely modifying their nonfiction system in many different ways. So Dewey is not the end-all be-all. It doesn't matter if you learn Dewey in elementary. You might not need it for the rest of your life because you're going to go to other libraries. It's really more important to teach our students that libraries are set up in a specific way. And here's how you can access a catalog, and here's how you can read spine labels. Like, these are the important pieces of library skills that we should teach our students. We don't need to teach them to memorize the Dewey sections. And then I hear, but wait, Dewey's already by topic. Why are you restarting over? It's already by topic. But is it? And I mean, yes, I know it is, but is it? So we have a big immigration research project at my school that happens in a 4-year cycle. And I was getting ready at the end of this year because it's this coming school year is when we're doing it. And I'm like, wait, I have immigration books at all these different call numbers. And yes, it's because some are the legal aspects of immigration. Some are immigration to the United States, the social aspects of immigration. But if I'm a student and I'm doing a research project on immigration and I'm not sure where I'm narrowing it down yet, I want to be able to go to one place and find everything I need there. And so I struggle with saying that, yeah, it is by topic, because sure, but also no. So this is all that was going through my mind when I started thinking about I need to change something. My biggest reason that I was like, I got to make a switch is the 300s. So every time I was doing inventory, I'd be like, why is this here? It bothered me to no end that our civil rights books are in the 300s, and that's a huge important part of American history, but they're in the 300s. They're not with all my US history books over the 900s. And having LGBTQIA books in the 300s specifically about like the gay rights movement, like, again, that's US history. Why is it there? This always bothered me. I just didn't like it. It was too large. It's hard for kids to browse, even with trying to do signage. So I was like, something has to be done about the 300s. And so here's a picture of a shelf of my 300s. And if you can see it, we've got a book about feeding the world on the same shelf as a book on illegal immigration, a book about crime, do police abuse their powers? Like, this is one shelf. And there's also immigration books somewhere else. And there's books about food and cooking and taking care of crime in different places. Reproductive rights was also on the shelf. So just an example of one shelf in the 300s. So I really wanted to give my students access and agency to the nonfiction section. And I found I was able to do that by genrifying my fiction. Like after I genrified my fiction, the circs went way up because students were easily able to find what they needed. They were able to browse like, hey, I'm in the mood for a mystery book, and they could just go right over there versus like going to the catalog, typing something in. My kids are browsers. I'm a high school library. When they come in, they might have like 4 or 5 minutes to try to find a book if they're doing it between class. They need to get in and out. And genrifying my fiction made that happen. So I'm like, I really want the same thing for nonfiction. There's so many awesome nonfiction books out there. We had some great presentations the other day about nonfiction. And I'm like, yeah, this great nonfiction. My kids aren't finding it because they're tucked away in different places where they might not want to look. So I was like, I got to do something. And maybe that is changing how my nonfiction is set up. So once I got on board and I'm like, I got to make this change, it didn't happen overnight. I wish it did. It did not happen overnight. So I finally, back in spring 2019, I was like, I'm doing my inventory and I'm like, all right, every year I do this, I get annoyed at the 300s. Let me take some, like, write some notes down. I'm going to notate like all my immigration books. I'll make a whole new call number, just stick them all together. Like that could work. I can move my civil rights books over into US history. Like I'll change a few things, like the things that bother me the most. So I made some notes about the call numbers and I'm like, all right, I'll do this next year. Well, I tend to do my things in the spring because a lot of my big research projects are done. Spring 2020, we all know what happened there. Not allowed back in the building with the rest of the school year. So nothing happened. Fall 2020, I'm excited. We are full remote to start the school year. And I'm like, there's no students in the building. This is a great time to start changing those call numbers. Like I have all my notes back from 2019. I can do this. But then I started feeling really overwhelmed with everything that was changing, trying to learn to teach online, learning all the new digital tools, and I didn't do anything. So fast forward to summer 2021, I had a super awesome pre-practicum school library teacher. She needed a 50-hour remote project. Alexandra Grimm is her name. She's now an academic librarian at Colgate, but she would make an awesome school librarian. I bet she's a great academic librarian. She's like, I need a project to do remotely. And so I was like, well, I've been really wanting to do this. I'm a little overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So she researched what other school libraries were doing. And then she went through, I gave her a spreadsheet of all my nonfiction and she reclassified it into categories that she thought it would work. That was amazing. That kind of got me over the hump of like, oh, there's too much to do. What do I do? Super duper helpful. So yes, shouts to Alexandra for all of that. So then spring 20, I didn't do anything though, because I'm busy. I only do things in the spring. Spring 2022, at the Massachusetts School Library Association conference, there was a presentation and discussion by librarian Anna Ring. And it was just a lot of librarians talking about what their thoughts are about changing Dewey, what they're thinking of doing or what they've done. And it really just solidified my thinking that I can do this and it needs to happen. I looked at Kelsey Bogan's amazing Ditching Dewey blog series to also be like, yes, I can do this. Look, another librarian did it. It's done. But then I was like, oh, this is a really big project. There's not enough time to start. We've only got a few more months of school left. I'll do it in the fall. So fall 2022, last school year, I was like, all right, here we go. Let's go. So it's time to get it done. So I just wanted to go through that so you could see there was a lot of thought put into it and a lot of things were getting in my way and barriers. So I'm going to tell you what I did and then give you some tips. So hopefully you don't have those same barriers. So first, I'm not ditching Dewey. I super admire the librarians who do, like Kelsey Bogan. Oh my God, I am in awe. I decided that wasn't going to work for me. So why? Well, the idea of replacing all my current call numbers along with any new book I get from a vendor for nonfiction seemed overwhelming. Like I love Mackin. Mackin is my supplier and I love that everything comes shelf ready, but I'm like, oh, I have to then replace all those call numbers when they come in or yeah. And then I also was thinking, what if it doesn't work? What if the kids actually don't like it? What if it's not working out? Like how I don't want to have to like redo everything again. So I'm like, well, if I don't completely ditch it, it would be easy to revert back. Then what if I leave and a new librarian comes in and they hate it? They're just completely against it. I don't want to make anyone's life more difficult. And the last thing is like just creating an entire new classification system is an enormous task. I'm pretty sure this is why it really isn't done widely and no one's tried to completely recreate Dewey. It's a huge task. It's scary. I was intimidated. So what am I doing? I decided to create topic-based sections, and part of that is I would create new spine labels for these topics, and my books are going to be shelved with their Dewey call number in call number order within each individual topic. So those Dewey numbers are staying on the books, but I am reshelving them by my own topics. So a big thing that was standing in my way before I started was like, well, when I did my fiction, I had a complete list of categories that I was going to genreify in. I had these colored labels to put over call numbers, and I was like, this is easy. I just got started off the bat. And I had to keep telling myself that, wait, nonfiction is different than fiction. It's okay. You didn't find the genre labels you like to do? Buy your own. You can't make your own. If you can't buy them, make them. And I didn't need to have a list to start with. So here is the process at a glance. So the first thing I do is I think of a topic and I make a topic spine label in Canva. Canva's amazing. Print them out. Go to a section that has most of that topic in. So for example, if I'm looking at the biology books, they're mostly all together in the 500s. Go through, weed any books that fall under musty, because I'm not going to bother relabeling a book that if it doesn't belong there. Spine label, label protector on the book, reshelve the book exactly on the shelf as it was. Make a list of all my topics that I'm creating. Then when I'm done completely, all those topics will be added to the ILS. I'm going to shift all those books into their new topic area, make new signage, and then go through and with a barcode scanner, make bulk changes and add a new shelf location. So the last three things I have not done yet because I haven't finished yet. So how did I start? I found blank labels, which on the next slide are linked. So if you're like, that sounds cool, that's a perfect label size, I want to use it, it's linked on another slide. I used Canva. My school has a color printer, so I was easily able to print them in color. And the very first one, I was like, all right, I'm going to start with something easy. Like, because some books are hard to decide where it belongs, but finance, I was like, finance is easy. And it was. I found all the books in my library related to finance, some in the 300s, some in the 600s, and like entrepreneurship, and put a sticker on all of them, label protector, and I started my running list. My running list is linked here. If you're following along, or you'll get it at the end, you can see my list. So here's examples of my topic spine labels. And also linked in here is a folder with all the ones I've made so far. So again, if you're like, this is cool, I want to use them, please feel free. I'd rather all my hard work get used than just by me. I did have some that were pre-made from Demco that I'm like, oh, these are cool, I'll use these. And definitely recommend those ultra aggressive label protectors from Demco. For many years, I didn't have a budget until just the last 2 years. Our district has been giving us a budget. So I was always just using like the book tape or the cheapest I could get. I finally had money to buy the ultra aggressive label protectors. Yeah, they're worth it, definitely. So yeah, weeding, I'm weeding. Again, I feel like I weed constantly every year. And I just wanted to throw this slide in to remind us all that it is okay to get rid of books. And it's also, if you're like, oh, but this book hasn't been checked out. So our school library opened in 2015. So I had some books that haven't been ever checked out, but I'm looking at them going, this is a really nice book. So I'm keeping some of them on the shelf, hoping that this reorganization is going to give them new life. And then there's some books that I'm like, where the heck would I put this book? And if I think really long and hard, and I have no idea where I would put it for a student to find, like I can't think of something a student would want to look for that book for, I'm weeding it. I'm giving myself permission to let it go. I can't think, it's never been checked out. Can't think of when a kid would ever ask for it or look for it. It's so here's a picture of an almost finished section. There were 2 books that I had not labeled yet. So this is what the sections look like right now. There's a mishmash of different labels. Some of them you can see this is in the 500s in the sciences and the chemistry. You can see that like they're still kind of grouped together, but then there's interlopers within. So eventually everything will get pulled off the shelves and reshelved. So here's the things I still have to do. I have to finish labeling and creating topics. I thought I could do it all this school year because like I said, typically my springs are kind of quiet. All the big research projects are done. I have a lot more time to get these things done. This year, we did a new civics research project with everyone, and I had a very busy spring, so I did not finish. My goal will be finished this fall, and I'm hoping by January, I can do a grand reopening of the nonfiction when we come back from break. So when I have the final list of topics, they'll be added to our ILS. I will shift, reshelve the nonfiction, make new signs, and then my bulk changes. So I want to make sure you learn from my mistakes and give you some tips to save yourself some time. So all those barriers that were getting in my way, I'm hoping to knock them over so they won't be in your way if this is something you want to do. And I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm not telling you to do this to your library. You need to do what's best for your school, your space, your students. I think this will be the best thing for my students. So that's why I'm making the change. I'm not making the change just because I hate Dewey. I'm making the change because I really think my students will be able to find awesome nonfiction books, and I want them to read more nonfiction. Okay, so big reminder, when you're doing this, or when you're making any change in your library, it's always a work in progress. It's not going to be perfect the first time around. So I was like, one of the easy ones, I'm like, I'm going to make a language section in the 400s, all related to language. I made my language stickers. I slapped them on the books. I just reshelved them. I'm like, this is great. A few months later, I'm like moving along and I'm like, oh yeah, 800s. Oh, I should have a writing section because there's a lot of books on how to be a good writer and like writing your own stories. So I made a writing section. And I'm like, wait, in the language section, we've got some spelling and grammar books. Should they move to writing now? Where do I think students will discover these the most? So this is something that as you're going through, this will happen. And I think this is what was getting in my way of starting when I was like, I need a list of every topic. You might not know what every topic is until you have your hands on the books and you're really getting into it. So I'm keeping my language section but I'm making it strictly like learning languages, and anything about spelling and grammar, I'm moving to writing, because if I'm a student who wants to get better at writing, I'm probably going to go there versus a language section. And when I don't know where a student would go, I ask them. So if the student's around in the library, I'll be like, hey, this is a book on spelling and grammar. If you wanted to look for this, would you go to a language section or a writing section? And I do that to a few different students. So I'm getting their feedback about where the students are expecting to look. Now at the very last week of school at the end of June, I was like, I really need to split up my belief systems. I made a belief systems section that has all the religion books, and it has all like mythologies, and there's a lot in there. And this was back when I was thinking there might be like 30 topics. Now I'm thinking there's going to be about 80 topics. So I'm probably going to split it up a bit smaller. My big reminder to you is that no taxonomy is perfect. There are problems now with Dewey. There are problems with LC. There's problems with the universal decimal system. Like, there's always going to be things that bother you about something. So don't aim for perfection, just aim for access. What will be most accessible for your students? I briefly mentioned this. I'm going to say it again, like, solicit your student opinion. Like, I'm changing this for students. I'm not changing it for myself. It's a lot of work for me. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for the students. So I've solicited student opinion around some specific sections of books. And then when students are in the library, if I'm like having a conundrum, I ask them. So I asked our Black Student Union, I was like, hey, we're revamping our nonfiction books. Do you want a Black history section separate? Do you want them within the US history section? Do we want to have a special label on them? How should I set up our Black history books? the kids really appreciated that. They got really excited about thinking about how libraries are set up and how they have they can share their opinion about our library. Like our library is their library. I did the same thing with our QSA about our LGBTQ history books. Like, where do you want these in the library? Should they be in their own section, the US history? And again, like whenever students are in the library, I'm like, where should this book go? It's their library too. We should listen to them. Look at what others have done. So I'm sharing with you what I have done. One thing that was super, super helpful to me was to look and see what other librarians had done. So Kelsey Bogan, again, she is so generous at sharing what she does. So I was referring to her adapted Dewey method, which she has since changed again. But I kind of felt like I was in conversation with her because I'm looking at what she did. And for so many of us, we're solo in our library. So we can't just turn to someone and be like, oh, what do you think about this? So I virtually would turn to a librarian and see, oh, what did they do here? And think of, okay, will that work for me? Is that a good idea? So use your, like, as Christina said, crowdsource, use your wider PLN, look at what I did, look at what others did. And there is still the hard stuff. Those 300s are still kicking my butt. Like I decided, I was like, I'm going to start with all the easy things first to classify. So easy in my mind was things I didn't really have to think about, like chemistry. Oh, these are all the chemistry books. Physics. These are all the physics books. And I was like, I'm going to wait for the 300s and 900s at the end, because those are going to need a lot more thought. And by the time I get there, I'll be really experienced at making these decisions. I do feel more experienced, but I'm still like, it's hard to be like, wait, should this go here or there? And the 900s, should this go here or there? So there will be some decisions to make. And you know what? If you do an adapted Dewey thing like me, you can make the change really easily. For me right now, because I don't have it my ILS, it's just changing that spine label sticker. If I'm like, wait, that book doesn't go there. In the future, it will just be changing the spine label sticker and then changing it in the ILS. So not too bad. And I finished with 2 minutes. Woo, okay. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm still there until it's gone. I need to find a new home, but I'm not sure where all the other cool kids are going. So I'm at Book Nerd Bonnie. Please feel free to email me, bmcbride@bostonpublicschools.org. I love talking libraries all the time. And if you have any questions, if you're like trying to work through something, I love being able to be in conversation with people. And again, here's the link to my slide deck. So you can go ahead and click all the linked resources that I did in there. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And
you know what, Bonnie, was about your presentation is that I've been on the fence about Dewey for quite some time. And I really like not just your content, but it's your approach, because I have attended, sessions like yours, and it was kind of like, you have to change, and you are leaving it up to the end user in terms of what they could possibly do. You presented the facts, the pros and the cons, the struggles, the victories, and that's exactly what people need to hear if they're going to make this change in their library program. So thank you for this presentation, and also how you approached it. I think you have something in Q&A. Yeah.
Oh, I see it now. Yes. So the question is, would you recommend tackling fiction or nonfiction first if neither are genreified? I would say go fiction. Like I feel my fiction, first of all, is where your kids are going to look first anyway. My fiction genreification was world changing for my library. So I would do that first, and then you get used to changing things. And then it was doing that, and then doing my bios, and then doing my graphics that I'm like, yeah, now nonfiction. Someone asked about picture books. So I'm a high school library. I do have picture books, but my picture books are just staying in their own section. It's picture books. And so I have picture fiction and I have picture nonfiction, and they're in their one display case. So I'm not genreifying those other than being picture books.
I'm fortunate. I have a lot of space in my library. I have a lobby. So in my lobby, I found myself genreifying the books, and I have noticed it has been a distinct difference. We have one more question.
One more question. Okay.
Move on to the next
How
one.
do you do bios? My My kids love memoirs. They don't read bios. We don't do bio research projects. So what I did is anything that was strictly a biography about a person, a lot got weeded, but anything that I wanted to keep, I put in their Dewey number, and I tagged on a 9-2 at the end to be like a bio, has a bio label. And then my memoirs are in their own thing.
One more quick question. Have you turned back and shared your process?
You know what? I haven't. I should. That's a really great question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you,
was the last
everyone.
question, y'all. We got to go to the next one.
Thank you, Casey.
Bonnie McBride, thank you so much. And please check out her information and her resources. I think it could be helpful for anyone that's on the fence. Thanks much.